Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to episode 4 of the Togens beginner fly tying kit. In this episode, we are going to be tying this variation of the Prince Nymph. This is more of a darker version of the traditional. You'll notice on most Prince Nymphs, they'll have a brown tail and some brown hackle. But again, one of those patterns that you can tie in various colors. I like this one. I've had the most success with this version and this size, particularly for steelhead as well. So we're going to go ahead and get our materials ready and get our hook and device and tie one on. Okay, so we got a fresh hook and device. I've already put the bead on it. So from your beginner fly tying kit, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and pull out the curved nymph hooks, and you're going to go and pull out your 2.8 millimeter gold tungsten beads. You're also going to go ahead and get your red thread. This should be a 70 denier, and we're going to start our thread base right behind the bead. We're going to end our thread right about where the barb of the hook would be, or just shy of the hook point there. And we're going to pull out the black Goose Biots, which we're going to tie on for our tail. Now I find the Prince Nymph is one of those patterns where proportions play a big part on the finished look of the fly. So I like to get some of the thicker portions, or I guess fibers of the Goose Biot. I like to use the thicker ones on the Prince for the tail and for the horns, which we're going to do later on. I just find it makes it look better. Different parts of the Biots are they can be thinner, and I find just they don't look as nice on this particular version, on this particular pattern. So there are a couple ways to tie on Goose Biot tails. One is always paying attention to the curvature of the Biot. You can see this one is fairly straight, but there is a slight curvature coming upwards. But you've seen probably other videos where they'll tie it onto the side of the fly. They'll tie on both Biots together on either side of the fly. For the Prince, I like to have the curvature facing down, and I'm actually going to tie it on top of the hook shank, so it's more like that. So on an angle, I'm going to try to get this on camera for you guys. Instead of tying it on the sides, I'm going to put it on the top and on an angle. So it's actually going to be tied in like that. And I'll do that one for one side, and then I'll grab my other Biot and I'm going to tie it in like that. Okay, so let's give this a shot here. So I'll traditionally, like most of my tailing, I'll do 1 to 2 just loose wraps, just to get it in position to see and make sure that it's where I want it. And you can see as I move the vise there, it moved things on me. So I'm going to leave that like that. I'm going to grab my other Biot. I'm going to try to get the measurements as closely as possible. And I'll do 2 collecting wraps again. And then I'll make adjustments as needed. And then once they're there, I'll grab my thread and I'll just cinch it down a little bit further so that they're not going anywhere. Now, if you do want more of your tails to splay out, once you do a couple wraps to cinch it down, you can come in between the biots and lift them up, and that'll help separate it. I'm going to leave mine exactly like that. You can see mine are coming down a little bit of an angle. That's how I like them. And I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to continue securing the butt ends of the biot just to help maintain a consistent profile and body. And now we're going to tie in our ribbing material. For that, in your pack, you're going to go ahead and grab your gold wire in your beginner's fly tying kit. You're going to unravel about, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches. Again, I'm no carpenter, so I don't not really go with measurements. I usually eyeball it, but I'll pull out a healthy strand. If you're in doubt, pull out more than you think you need. It just makes handling the materials a little bit easier. I'll then stick this butt end right inside the bead to help keep that in place. And I'm tying this on the side of the hook that's facing me. And then as I start to wrap my thread back, you can see I'm pulling down probably like on a 45-degree angle. And what that's going to do is have that wire right underneath the hook shank. So it's going to be on the underside of the fly. And I'm going to bring that right back to where my tail started. Okay, so it looks something like that. Now we're going to be tying in our body material. In your pack, you also have some Peacock Herl. So for this size fly, I'll typically grab 2 of the thicker fibers, something a little bit more healthy looking. No 2 strands are ever the same, so I'll try my best to get something consistent. And then once I have my 2 fibers selected, I'll line up the butt ends, because the butt ends are the stronger part of the stem, and then the other side, the tips, are very, very fragile, and I'll nip off the first 1 to 2 inches of it. And then what I'll do is, just to get the feather ready, I'll kind of preen all the little fibers back and just give it a more of a bushier look. Now there are tons of ways to reinforce the Peacock Herl because it is so brittle, but I don't want to complicate things for you in this tutorial, so I'm going to do it the simplest way possible. And now, like most of my nymphs and flies that I tie, I like to have a tapered body. I feel profile or shape of the body is a big thing. If you look at all the nymphs under rocks in the water and stuff, they all have unique shapes, very unique characteristics, and the body is one to me that stands out the most. So I'm going to take my time now, and I'm actually going to build a tapered body here and make it get thicker as I get closer to the bead. And then occasionally spinning my thread counterclockwise to open up my thread. Okay, I'm gonna end my thread right behind the bead. Gonna grab your Peacock Herl. And again, there's lots of ways to reinforce it because they are brittle, but we're gonna keep it simple today, and I'm just gonna start wrapping my Peacock Herl. Just touching wraps, trying to make sure I just cover the thread, but not overlap the Peacock Herl. Just touching. And this will keep the little fibers nice and bushy. And then when I get to the bead, I'm going to go ahead and secure it in. Now, because they are brittle, you could probably just tear off one by one, but I've done that a couple times and unraveled the whole thing. So I just cut them with my scissors now. Now we're going to grab our ribbing that you had tied on previously. And to help with the durability of the fly, we're going to counter wrap the ribbing. So we're not going to go the same way as we did with the Peacock Herl. We're going to wrap it the opposite way. And like most nymphs, you'll notice that any segmentation that they have, the segmentation is usually very close together by the tail. And as it starts to come up towards the middle and top portion of the fly, they kind of get bigger, right? The spaces in between get wider. So again, I'm always trying to mimic something real as much as possible. So now that I got that secured in, I can come in here and helicopter my wire. Okay. Now we're ready for the legs. Some people refer to it as the throat. We'll just refer to it as legs for this tutorial. So in your beginner's fly tying kit, you also got a bunch of saddle. It's a saddle pack, and it came with various strands, which we used on the woolly bugger pattern, I believe in episode 1. But in this case, what I'm looking for are some of these longer and larger fibers. We're not going to be using the thinner end, right? That's too small, but I do want some of this bigger stuff, right? And that's going to provide a nice set of legs. So from here, I'm just going to be selective. I'm going to pull out the fluffies. So you'll notice that, here's the nice part of the feather, and then here's that bushy, nasty stuff. We're gonna pull all that off. So I'll preen it back first, and then grab one side and peel it off. Right, so you're left with something like that. The other thing when looking at, when you're looking at all feathers, when you're looking at all materials, you want to always look at the natural curvature of what it's doing. So you can see this one, the fibers are kind of going down and curving. So I don't want to tie it in this way, because as I start to wrap, they're going to kind of naturally want to bend this way, what I don't want. So by flipping it over and tying it in this way, when I start to wrap, they're naturally going to go towards the tail of the fly. So let me just fix this up here. So now that I have my feather ready, I'm going to tie in the thicker part of the stem, and I'm going to leave just a touch to start my wrap, so that when I start to wrap it, it wants to fold over naturally, and I have a way to manipulate the stem if it's not cooperating. So I got that secured in now. Nip off my stem, and now I can start wrapping my feather to create my legs. So that looks pretty good there. Now I'm just going to capture that. And I'll do two wraps, and then when holding it in, give my thread a little pull just to make sure it's secured in snugly. Nip off my tag end. And now I want the legs to kind of go back a little bit, like that. So I'll sweep all the fibers back, and I'll just do one, maybe two wraps, because I am going to tie in some more material for now, just to help with that natural positioning. And then before we tie on our horns, I'm just going to clear the path here, and I'm just going to nip off the fibers at the top of the fly. I think that's enough. So now we're ready for our horns, and in your beginner fly tying kit, again, you're going to go ahead and grab your white goose biots. And again, very similar to the tail, be selective. You know, find the nice thicker parts, or the thicker little individual pieces that you think are going to look good on the fly. It's one of those flies that are very, very particular on proportions. I find if you get the proportions perfect, it really helps with the overall look. So there are, again, a variety of ways to tie on the horns. The simplest method is simply placing it on top and tying it in. Tying both in. I find that when tied just like this, the horns come off. You know, it doesn't matter how much glue I've put in the past, they come off in the water naturally, not even with a fish bite. So I had found this video a long time ago on how to help prevent that and just make them a little bit more durable. So what I do now for all my princes is that I'll take that natural curvature, which is going up, and I'm going to tie them in facing the front of the fly. And I'm estimating when I fold this back how long it's going to be, because I don't want it longer than my tail. So what I'll do is I'll just do sort of 1, 2 collecting wraps, and then I'll fold it back to see where it lies. And to me, that's perfect. That's exactly where I want it. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to grab my other biot. Same thing. Curvature facing upwards. I'm going to put this one back to help with my measurement. And do 1, 2, and those look good there. Right, so they look the same. So when I fold them back now, they're going to be pretty much dead on. So again, I'm going to hold these in place, and I'm going to give my thread a nice little pull. I'll do 1, 2 really securing wraps, and then I'll come in here and I'll nip off the butt ends as close as possible. And you're going to be left with something like that. And now all you got to do is with your fingernail, bend that back and try to get right behind that bead with your nail. And then once it's bent, you have that initial crease in there. Just bend them back, hold them with your left hand, and you can do some wraps to get them to lay exactly the way you want them to. So to me, that's how I want them. I like them a little high. If you want to have them sit lower, you just simply come back with your thread a bit more, and they'll lay down a little bit flatter. So before I get carried away with my thread wraps as usual, I'm going to go ahead and whip finish this. And we're going to put a dab of head cement. Let that sink in. And there you have it, guys. A Prince Nymph. I'll tie these in a variety of sizes. We did them in the size 12 Nymph in this tutorial. There's size 10 variations of this that are awesome for steelhead. That's on the more of the larger side. But I'll tie these from 10, 12, 14, even 16s for some of these smaller creeks that I like to fish. So hope you give it a try. Hope you enjoyed the video and tune into the next one. Cheers. Thanks, guys.